the soul of the Cayman Islands.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, you remember some of us were much older? You probably remember that the Johnny Carson show. Probably one of the best stand-ups you ever had. But anyway, he was a good fellow. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255 is open line until at least 1 p.m. Want you to share your thoughts with us, be a part of our discussion, get into the freer things. It's important that we do just that. It's always encouraging to be able to sit and listen to people reason. Sometimes, as they come to rational conclusions, you recognize that many of us take for granted the space and place in which we live. So I want to extend a very special invitation to each to share. Help us to appreciate who we are, where we are, and why. In this time, it's important to be doing what we're actually doing if you're going to add value to others. 949-8037, 949-8037. 1-800-534-8255 is our Flow toll-free line. Of course, 925-3261 is the WhatsApp. Now, I would like to, if you would permit me, to do two things off the bat in an attempt to not just be grateful but gracious, to show appreciation. And especially as we champion health services and education, I want to say a special, shout out, as they say, the young people share. I want to commend the staff and entire teams over at the Health Services Authority, by extension all in the healthcare sector, but at the HSA in particular, whether they're in radiology, whether they're in ER, whether they're in ACU, irrespective of where they are. Such a phenomenal team. It reminds us of the competence, commitment, dedication, diligence that we have. So to Hank Lynn, to O'Neill Brown, all the rest of them, man, thank you very much. I'm amazing to see the dedication, and hopefully by extension, each of us, as we come to the table to do our jobs, we will bring our very best game every day. And through our example, we'll inspire our colleagues, and by extension, those around us to do the same. Everybody doing their utmost. Late last evening, when most of us were probably left their desks, many civil servants, I think Nurse Michelle and the others, for instance, sitting by the desk clearing the work that they do, the paperwork, to make sure all the patients are attended to, make sure all the clients and customers are satisfied. That's the diligence that we have, and I want that to be the example. That was the work ethic that we saw growing up from our parents. That's the work ethic that we want to instill in our children, because that's the example we want to set. And if we do that, we'll see how much better it is. It means that we're not only responsible, but we're also committed and dedicated, and we're accountable as we hold each other accountable. We'll be, as Ms. Dorrit shares, our brother's keeper. Now, in that celebrating our people, if I can say to many who are celebrating their birthdays today, very blessed happy birthday, and in particular Miss Althea Powell, 100 years today, and we want to wish her a very blessed birthday. Now, I want you to call and share your thoughts with us. You may have something that you think, this needs to be discussed. This needs to be discussed more. Or it's being discussed, but this perspective isn't being necessarily considered. I share with you two things. One, an individual called late yesterday to ask, where is the public in talking about, and they listed 3 things, and in asking that, proceeded to answer simply, it's because sometimes when you bring something to the fore, you realize very quickly that it reflects on you, the person making the comment or asking the question. That query reflects on you because the people that is involved are you, people you know, and then it reflects also because you live and work in this space. So how does that thing reflect on you? Now, you might say, well, that's the issue in a small community. And it might be. But if it's magnified, that means that then it should be addressed and perhaps corrected. Or if it's something that is good, it can be celebrated and ensure that that becomes, that thing that serves as an example as to how things should be done. Businesses talk about, benchmarking and the like. While it doesn't mean that it's all good that we are talking about, there are certain things that even though we don't celebrate the good, sometimes we refuse to even acknowledge the bad. And as a result, it becomes ugly. And we should not let that be the norm in our society. Many of us share privately with those we hold in confidence certain things that are said publicly that we do not agree are necessarily the best practice. But because of fear of offending others, or ourselves being displaced or ridiculed, ostracized, maligned, or some other way castigated, we think this thing is not the best thing. But yet we don't, because again, we don't want to offend someone that we know, perhaps someone in a position of authority, maybe even further up the ladder in the organization in which we work. But if we say right is wrong and wrong is right, something isn't right about that. Or is it? Well, tell us. 949-8037, 949-6990, or toll free at 1-800-534-8255. Then the other thing that we want to reference is the whole, consideration of where we are in our society relative to the whole issue of crime and criminal behavior, and what sometimes should constitute a criminal offense. We know, for instance, the government of the day is considering, speaking to the public via a referendum, what to do about legalizing or decriminalizing. Perhaps that in itself should be properly discussed. The whole notion of ganja. We're looking at the gaming sector, lotteries, numbers, and the like. And I'll share a particular sentiment as expressed by a few others. But let's look at guns. It's something that has been discussed by many. We see what we would want to say is the continued diligence of the good folks at CBC. Passenger comes in, the press release reads, with firearms. The individual is in court today, we gather. There are many speculating as to, well, what would happen and how did it happen? And thankfully, the vigilance of the folks at our borders are intercepting. But what continues to drive this? Some would share, well, if you see the behaviors of certain countries when it comes to guns in their society, they may tighten the rules as to how the citizens can illegally obtain and license their various weapons. Now, what do we do, and how does that affect us? Perhaps it just shows increasingly that we live in a global world where, through the ease with which we can fly from one destination to the next, the trade and commerce that go between one country and the next brings us ever more connected. Well, I want you to weigh in and give us your perspective. Hey, 949-8037, 949-6990, or 1-800-534-8255, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. I want to share with us a number of topics, but want to be sort of led by you. We can guide some of the discussion. We have a few messages, discussing or asking the discussion about the minimum wage. We'll read those messages once we come back from the break. But as you perhaps sit and open up your, can you picture it? Your lunch container. Remember the days you have that and you're about to have lunch? Well, maybe you're in your car, maybe you having the good fortune of being able to look out over the water. Maybe you're at home taking your lunch break. Maybe your mind is somewhere where you wish your body was. Maybe you're just very pensive. Maybe you're rushed. Well, take a second. Give us a call and share your thoughts. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Savannah Pharmacy, proud sponsor of Talk Today, Cayman's #1 call-in talk program. A new year upon us. Upgraded resolutions. Some things change. Some things linger. When it comes to who you trust, your friendly neighborhood pharmacy, Savannah Pharmacy, is here, where everybody knows your name. Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, just around the corner, with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. They say variety is the spice of life, and that's why at Subway we are introducing the new boneless hot sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
Apply today to the Walker Scholarship and Legal Training Program. You will join the Walker Scholarship and Legal Training Program, knowing that you will be offered more, both throughout your time in the program and after qualifying as a Cayman Islands attorney at law. Preparing Caymanians for a career of excellence through mentorship, opportunities, repetition, and experience. Be sure to have your application submitted by 28th of February 2023. Visit the careers section at walkersglobal.com to find out more about Walker's Cayman legal scholarships, articles of clerkship, qualifying work experience, and legal internships.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
The best foundation you can wear is glowing, healthy skin. The offices of dermatologist Dr. Dwayne Porter specialize in enhancing your skin's well-being. Whether you're seeking advanced skin care, including any skin cancers, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email drportercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020. That is 946-9020.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. 949-8037, 949-6990. Or toll free at 1-800-534-8255 as we invite you to call and share your thoughts. And as some of you have shared, there is still, sadly, in this society, in this day and age, many, not just those who either worked or are working for the public sector, statutory authorities, government-owned companies, or the core civil service, but even the private sector agencies who would say, well, we should talk about this, but I don't want to bother to, hear me say that? Well, understandably, people are concerned sometimes, just the perception that there may be some negative, to their speaking publicly. Well, that's not really healthy, is it? So 949-8037, 949-6990, or 1-800-534-8255. You can WhatsApp, and we'll read a couple of these for us, 925-3261, if you want to. This listener asked, if there's any chance that the minimum wage could be, increased soon. So what is needed is a minimum monthly living wage. For the hourly rates, can be manipulated, but the minimum monthly take home is what really matters. This person shares that even some of the full-time government agency staff earn less than $3,000 a month now. Suggests that the Portfolio Civil Service was supposed to correct that from a while back. Maybe it's opportune time to have the minimum wage committee come on the show to discuss it. People are suffering now. Suggest, and ask. Well, I said, don't wait until months before the elections to address this very key concern. Well, we see the challenges that people are facing relative to their ability to pay their rent, their mortgage, buy groceries, meet their living expenses. Many would say they have, more month than money. Fella would always say, he gets paid weekly, very weekly. Well, this other listener shared this thought, and questions, whether not just our political leadership but others, if we're straying relative to our national conversations so far from reality. It says that our elected officials seem to sometimes lose the, touch with our folks. Perhaps they've forgotten the important issues like affordable health care, housing, public transportation, educational improvements, working to ease the traffic congestion, the cost of living situation, pensions, beach accesses, home insurance, minimum wage, and similar. So instead, sometimes we get fixated on the 3 G's that waste our time and our resources: gays, gambling, and ganja. Now, perhaps you heard of 5G. Well, this listener says the 3 G's. Is it then, as this listener shares, that as a people, and in particular the elected, are we losing sight of important issues? We're not having those national conversations, just like these two. One of them was, the cost of living, how much we're earning, how much we earn, how far it goes, how can we pay, for our living expenses. Now, there are many who would say, well, there should even be an ability to save something. It is one thing when we hear financial advisors get on and they say, well, cut your expenses, have a budget. But the reality is that many people, not just because of past experiences for whatever reason, are finding that their expenses every week, every month greatly exceed the amount of money that they make. So as much as they try to tighten their budget, cut back on certain things, there still isn't enough for different reasons. Maybe they're not making enough to begin with. Maybe what they're making because of what they're spending and their own situation, whether it's the reality or not. Some would say it obviously is. The costs are going up. Many allege that every week when they go to the supermarket, or every other week, or however often, the price of the items that they buy frequently seem to be more expensive. Some would say that not only has the price increased on those items, but perhaps the quality, the shelf life is reduced, perhaps even the actual size. Now, there are studies from what you may see in what should be or is expected or perceived to be reputable resources that say as well, the price of this item, used to be this at this time for this size container. Now the price is higher and the size is greatly reduced. Is there value for money? Some of you may have been familiar with the term sheeting, and it's just an interesting play as to how consumers feel that they're being treated by manufacturers relative to other products. But the reality at the end of the day is that you don't have sufficient income to meet your ongoing expense. If you look at that by extension, the notion that you might say, one day I would like to be able to own a piece of vacant property to perhaps build a future home, or to have for your children or your children's children, that becomes in your mind almost an impossible endeavor. Or you might say, well, I find it increasingly harder to do this or that, including savings. How do we address that? How do we address that? Then some would share, well, the idea that everybody should own their own homes is really unrealistic, isn't something that we should aspire to. It was something that may have been possible a generation or 2 or 3 ago, but no longer. Others will share that they can point to other jurisdictions where you don't really own anything, you just rent it for life. Is that what we should aspire to? Should that become the new norm? If so, why? And then on top of that, if a people accustomed to certain things no longer feel that those things are realistically attainable, what happens? Again, I've referenced it a number of times. I hope and pray that my reference is not only respectful and timely, but may cause many of us as adults to think of what we can do to address it, because it's relevant and absolutely important. Well, Chad Anthony Powell Jr.'s address as part of the UK Youth Parliament in the House of Commons said, it's good that my contemporaries are talking about issues affecting the environment, but here's something that's real to me and to my generation. We don't know if we're going to be able to afford to live in our own country. Will there be land, vacant or otherwise, to buy? Would we be able to build? Will we be able to continue to live in there? What is the point of this? And I only reference that because a long time ago, even on this show, I said something similar, repeating what young high school students were sharing. But have we taken it on board? Are we expecting that the answers should come from the government, or the answers should only come from the government, and the elected government in particular? Now, many would say, well, that's why we elected them. But then if they're not doing that, what are we doing to help them? If they're not doing that because our demands on them are, such that they don't have time to really focus on these big items. Now, is that because of other endeavors? And the we isn't just the voter. Perhaps the we is the person funding the campaign, the people that we refer to as special interests. Now, we have a different sort of expectation of what we are asking of the elected, but what about also the appointed within the civil service that are there to help with the implementation and guiding as best as possible the most effective, efficient way to get the political directorates, policies to be beneficial to the country, but also the appointed to the boards, the appointed who are not necessarily directly connected to government, but they're private sector organizations, business interests, and the like, that can help to sometimes influence directly, deliberately, or sometimes otherwise what is transpiring in our country. The collective we working together. Now, if you see what is happening, we would probably appreciate that the more there's a greater sense of collaboration and cooperation, we can see better outcomes. I would not profess to have any great insight nor knowledge when it comes to policing and the like, but it would not be difficult to act on the premise that if the different law enforcement agencies in the region or in areas can cooperate, share information, work together to ensure that certain practices are curtailed, whether that's the smuggling of people or drugs or guns or some other illicit or illegal activity, that would not only help that particular jurisdiction, but perhaps the surrounding areas. That level of cooperation, I think, we see something that's encouraged. But how do we fund that? How do we assist? Now, should we just leave that to those entities and not play a role as the wider community? I had an interesting conversation, and with his permission, hopefully one day his health will allow him to share more with us and directly. He says, we take for granted the democracies that we occupy, and we have to be mindful that as we ask governments to do more for us as citizens, that we are not becoming increasingly dependent on the government, or that we're not saddling the government with an increased debt in order to provide these services. But he also questions, to what extent are we cognizant that we may either unknowingly and inadvertently create a police state? His words, in that crime is in a particular area, or our personal safety, understandably so, is of concern. So the government's response to perhaps the pressure on the politicians to put, again, his words, pressure on the policing apparatus. Hey, we need more policing. The policing says, well, we need more cars and other resources, including people. And we need you to fund this, so we do that. And then all of a sudden, you go from one police officer to 1,000 police officers. Well, what does that mean for us, and how does that play out? And then what is the consequence of that relative to that money that's being spent on that? Is money then available to be spent on something else? Well, there are other consequences as well, as maybe some of you may want to share. So 949-8037, the phone lines are available. As they ring, we'll happily answer and take your calls. 1-800-534-TALK, 1-800-534-8255, or 949-6990. Or you can WhatsApp 925-3261 and share your thoughts with us as we invite you to be a part of our discussion. It's very important that we appreciate where we are. Now, it's going to be a great day, and as soon as Miss Susan tells us, we put the calls through. But no, her instructions are, hey, take that break, my friend. I want to get my commercials in. Well, we're going to have a quick pause for the wonderful sales team's excellent work at giving our advertisers the needed airplay. So stay tuned and join us for after.
Savannah Pharmacy, proud sponsor of Talk Today, Cayman's #1 call-in talk program. A new year upon us. Upgraded resolutions. Some things change. Some things linger. When it comes to who you trust, your friendly neighborhood pharmacy, Savannah Pharmacy, is here, where everybody knows your name. Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, just around the corner, with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
It's Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's 2-for-1 Taco Tuesdays, and it's happening all day long at Taco Restaurant and Bar located in East End and West Bay. Who doesn't love tacos, especially when they're 2-for-1? Featuring specialty tacos like peanut chicken, blackened fish, pulled pork, vegetarian and coconut shrimp, and of course, all of your favorites. Enjoy 2-for-1 tacos and 2-for-1 margaritas every Tuesday at Taco Restaurant and Bar, all day long. located in East End and in West Bay.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. It is open line, and a few quick messages just during the break I want to share with us. But can I say that on air, Miss Susan? Or would you say that for us? She's gonna. I wanted to tell you what she just told me. Boy, that sounds appealing. She said no, she's not gonna say that. Well, this open line, and we want you to call. Tell us what you're thinking. With at the request of the two individuals, and I'm not going to go on a premise that they are known to each other or that they decided that two people almost back to back would have sent something very similar. I'm not suggesting or saying that don't know that it was or wasn't the case, but it's interesting. And why I emphasize that is that just, to remind us, you may have a thought. You may think, well, you're the only one thinking that. Rest assured that you're not. And here is an example. So two unknown numbers don't really sometimes matter. What's important is that you hear what people are saying. You take time to try to listen, to understand. And if you're going to respond, you do it from a considered perspective. Now, two people, and it's not surprising, given what we're seeing in the media, are asking the question, well, how secure are our borders? Now, both individuals made their comments in quite different styles, but the gist is still the same. How secure are our borders? What else is coming in, and in what way, whether it's guns or otherwise, that we're not realizing are coming in, so they go in undetected. But they both said, hey, let's publicly commend the folks over at Customs and Border Control for doing a job. How are we now going to support? Do we need additional resources, not just people, but equipment? One suggests fingerprinting, others have suggested other measures of biometrics. And how do we ensure that not only we increase the potential to detect these activities, but what level of cooperation? Now, neither of the two messages was asking for the public to be any more informed than is necessary, but to ensure that the public is timely advised of things that happen, so that we can be a willing partner. Now, one of the two messages suggests we fish a lot. Is there a way that we can leverage those boats out there to be able to say to the Coast Guard, hey, I'm fishing, this is what I'm seeing, how can I share with you? It may not be anything. Now, I'm only inferring that one of the individuals is probably someone who spends a bit of time on the water, whether it's just a recreational fish or otherwise, saying, we're out there. It's a big span of water around us. We're on an island. Could we use that to help with the policing? Boats coming and going, and they may be legit. The person quickly adds, let's be careful that we don't impinge on people and become, my words, not the individuals, this policing state. But at the same time, how do we ensure that we are adding additional eyes and ears to the increased potential for safety? The other message asks, when it comes to technology, is there anything similar to the weather buoys that we put in that could be used to help to detect vessels coming and going? Obviously, I infer in this instance that the concern, given that our borders are quite porous, and no matter the attempt, how valiant it is to ensure that we are interdicting as much as possible, it's impossible to be I guess what it would be 24/7, 365, around the island constantly. So what do you think? Well, two people weighing in almost back to back on a similar issue, both wanting to commend CBC for its efforts, but both asking, well, what more can be done by the country relative to resources and by citizens relative to its collaboration to ensuring that not just guns but other activities are curtailed. And then when there is an interdiction and arrest, that the sanctions send a very clear message that these behaviors are not behaviors to be tolerated. Your thoughts? Well, I want to hear from you. 949-8037, 949-8037, 949-6990, and of course the toll-free call 1-800-534-8255. The other thing that we wanted to perhaps ask is, after a very, very brief discussion earlier by, now I don't want to call them elderly folks, because if I do that, they may say, listen to me, it's good that you're respectful, but we're not elderly. Well, they are certainly a number of years my senior, and even if they weren't, I hope that I would be absolutely respectful and loving and considerate. But because they are, I think that they, despite their many attempts to say, listen, you don't need to call us, Mr. and Mrs., even though they understand that that is not just the respect with which we have been raised, but it's sort of the cultural norm. Having said that, their youthful enthusiasm, their keen interest in the continued success and safety and security and political and economic and social stability for this country is unquestioned. But both, have shared that as a country, are we conscious of some of the changes that are taking place almost overnight, and B, are we, and I question when you said we, are we always talking and pointing fingers at the politicians? And they say no, the politicians will do where they believe they get the loudest return. So if the collective populace isn't speaking about certain things or seemingly supporting certain things, the nature, as they see it, the politics is to ensure that that thing that is popular and makes them that much more sort of popular with the electorate is the thing that the politician will do. But the person, interest in something may encourage that person to speak about it. Now, these two individuals talked about many things and asked the question, what are we doing relative to the pace of development and the type of development and the scope of development, and the notion that we are, without question, living in a space where there's limited physical land as we see it. Now, an aerial sort of map would probably show that there are many undeveloped lands, but to what extent those lands should be developed, and if developed, the timing. We see a lot of, in my words, swamp lands, but as the two individuals emphasize, are these, lands that should be developed, and if they're developed, what is the environmental consequence? What would happen, as one said, for instance, in trying to excavate to build a road, are we unearthing and disturbing anything that's there? Would that release, and certainly they did not say this to be inflammatory or to cause people to be overly concerned, but they said, if these lands have been undeveloped for all this time, maybe when we go there, are there things that we will release, from noxious fumes to the idea that there could be some sediment that could stir up something that could release some sort of pathogen? They're not saying that it would, but they're asking, do we know if it would? And then the environmental consequence. Are these lands there to help to drain some of the runoff? Are they to contain some of the impact that nature itself would have on us if we develop? And then just the cost of building these. For instance, if it's a road, how deep are some of these swampy areas? What's the physical, cost of the people to do that? What is the financial cost? how do we build it? They both shared that perhaps what would benefit the country is instead of looking at building 30, 40, 50, 100-story buildings, that maybe we take a pause. We can see with the escalating cost of construction, irrespective of the reports that by summer we would see some building costs come down relative to materials, but we see interest rates increasing and potentially continue to do so, at least for the remaining part of this year. Now, would it be beneficial to the country that we put a pause, not, they said, not a moratorium, just a pause, just a time to breathe, to reflect, to appreciate that if we continue to inject capital into the economy, we could continue to overheat it. We would displace people. We put increasing pressure. Now, both, I think, were of the view that many would see, well, let's catch it while we can mentality. Money is to be made. Let's make it now because we don't know what happens next week, next year, or the like. So we can make it in the times of plenty, so we have some in the times of not so. The consequence they both shared is that this continued pace could do a number of things, not just make things ever more expensive and out of the reach of many, but it could create that down the road we have a wasteland. We don't have anything left to develop. And what is the thought process then? Well, wait on that. If you wish, share another perspective if you so desire, but give us a shot after a news break. 1-800-534-8255, 1-800-534-TALK. Join us after the news.
You are listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Zollins. The National Youth Commission logo design competition opened Monday, January 30th. The designer or designers of the winning entry will receive a $1,000 prize. All entries must be submitted to nyccaymanislands@gmail.com by 11:59 p.m. on Monday, February 20th, 2023. In international news, an Iranian couple in their 20s have been given jail sentences totaling 10 years after posting a video of themselves dancing in the street. They were reportedly convicted for promoting corruption, prostitution, and propaganda. The video showed them dancing by Tehran's Azadi Freedom Tower. Authorities are handing heavy sentences to people seen to be involved in protests after the death of a woman who was detained by morality police. The couple did not link their dance to the ongoing protests in Iran. Canada's province of British Columbia is starting a first-in-the-nation trial decriminalizing small amounts of hard drugs, such as cocaine and heroin. From Tuesday, adults can possess up to 2.5 grams of such drugs, as well as methamphetamine, fentanyl, and morphine. Canada's federal government granted the request by the West Coast province to try out the 3-year experiment. It follows a similar policy in the nearby U.S. state of Oregon, which decriminalized hard drugs in 2020. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Zollins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Born September 25th, 1947 at Watering Place, Cayman Brac, Royce Adolphus Dilbert was the firstborn son of Helen and Grace Dilbert, née Tibbets. Like many of the men of his time, he spent many years at sea. During his breaks from sea life, Mr. Dilbert employed his diverse skill sets. He worked at Alfred Scott's block factory as a mechanic with Eston Scott, and his uncle Bergman Dilbert performed dynamite blasting in Cayman Brac with the late Reverend Lee King, as well as worked at MRCU in Grand Cayman. He was also an entrepreneur selling fruits, cars, and tires, and painted and repaired vehicles. His mechanical skills proved immeasurable when in 1979, working in the Campeche Bank oil field, Mexico, his ship was chartered by Halliburton to supply material to cap the exploratory well which blew out in Mexico's Bay. In 1981, he retired from sea and took employment with the Cayman Brac Power and Light Company as chief engineer, where he remained until his retirement in December of 2018.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. 949-6990, 949-8037. Of course, you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Here's a WhatsApp that we want to read, and this was speaking about the issue of gambling. A couple of different messages, and hopefully I've managed to not only see them clearly, read them correctly. And this one says, we all know the lotteries are a regressive tax. And those at the bottom pay the most, and that's especially as a percentage of their incomes. Now, in the issue of gambling, this message says that the way it's designed is to ensure that the house wins more than the players, and collectively, the players would be the losers. This one questions the whole idea of, what is it that we're trying to achieve by legalizing or somehow dealing with the issue, and is that a discussion that we have? If I read this other one correctly, let me pull this other message up. And those who want to message, it's 925-3261. 925-3261 is our WhatsApp. Or you can call us 949-8037, 949-8037, or 949-6990, and share your thoughts. Many have a perspective. I want to get the permission to read this other message relative to gambling. It is a fairly long message. I wouldn't call it an epistle. There are some supporting studies about the cost of gambling to a society, not just the financial cost to the individual, but to the community and the like. But let's go to the phones. Hey, good afternoon, welcome, thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sterling, how are you?
Oh, very well, sir. How about yourself?
Yes, very thankful,
Thank God, yes.
God has been really good to me.
Amen. He has indeed been good to all of us.
Oh, absolutely, but not all of us acknowledges it. That's what let me turn my radio down.
Okay, thank you very much. See that, sometimes it's be good to be guided. So everybody has an opportunity. But as you read it, sir.
Here's the title of 6 books, and I didn't say it to you. I don't know if you got the impression that I was telling you to order these books, because I think you say you know how to order them. But what I did, you be on every day, it looked like. So I figured if someone would like to get one of those books or whatever, they could call you, and you could set them up if they need to get it. I read the first one I gave you, on Unquiet Mind. All the others I'd never read, but some people that I've talked to told me about different ones.
Right.
But written by her, by that lady, doctor, they had to be good. She was up until now. I think I said that to you, that she was one of the best psychiatrists I knew in the business in the Western Hemisphere. Well, of course, that could have changed in the last couple of years. Somebody else might have come up be a little. I hated her, but for me, she was great, and the fact that she ended up at Johns Hopkins Department of Psychiatry in charge of that made me know that she was brilliant.
Right. This is Dr. Jameson, for those
Right.
who... Right. Okay.
You looked it up, I guess, huh?
Yes, so I love to read, you know. I credit my parents and my sisters in particular, and it doesn't mean that I'm smart. It doesn't mean that necessarily I always understand what I read or even remember it. But, you know, if you read, you might pay attention, you may learn something.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I only wanted to say, well, I didn't want to confuse anyone, that I was just saying to you as here.
Right.
You know, hopefully if some of these people, and of course, you know, I know that it's like if you got a mental problem in Cayman, it's not easy to manage.
Yeah.
But hopefully now that it's getting more exposure and the building, the Alex Patton Foundation place, that might open up things and they would understand that mental illness is an illness too.
Right, right.
You don't have to show bleeding or something to get some sympathy. But it's a difficult thing. The psychiatrists do the best they can, but, you know, it's like a touch and go thing. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that to make people know that.
Right. Well,
that you probably had it on tape, I guess, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah. I want to do two things. First, thank you for not just sharing with us about the books. You certainly didn't say anything about it, go out and buy them or whatever. You just said these were books that you were aware of. For my own benefit, I made a note because it's good just to read. But I also want to thank you for reminding all of us how important our health is, you know, to our well-being, to society. And our mental health should just be part of our health. And that's a discussion we should have more and more, right?
Right.
If I could ask, though, you referenced, you know, you read the first one, on an unquiet mind. If it's okay, of the other remaining 5, which other one do you think you hope to get to if you were to read, you know, The Passion for Life, or which other one you'd want to read?
Oh, I hadn't really made a decision on that.
Okay.
In fact, I would hope, I don't know how much longer God got for me here, but I want to read that. At least I hope that I can get to read a couple more of those books, because any of those books you read, based on what some of my friends have told me, you know, you're bound to gain something.
Well, that's the thing, you see. It's important, I believe, for us to, as you've done, you read something, you know, heard something that's worthwhile, you want to share with other people, like we do with a recipe or a particular dish. If it's something that we think is good and beneficial, we share with others. Absolutely. So they can benefit from it. And I really appreciate, on a personal level, that you shared, you know, that physician with us, those books, and maybe it'll benefit us or someone we know.
Right. Well, I since it looked like today didn't have too many, I thought I would sneak in here and clear that up, because I didn't have anything prepared to get on the radio with you on.
That's fine, sir.
When I'm ready, I'll get back with you, okay?
All right. Well, we got to wait for you and hope that the rest of your day is a wonderful day, and we talk to you when you're ready again.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
Amen. God bless as well. Thank you very much. And I'm hoping, you know, some of us would recognize the gentleman or think we know who it is, only because he did not this time say who it is. Not other than the reason, the fact that, you know, he didn't. But take on board what he said, not so much who said it. For those who know who said it, realize, well, he took time to say it, so we could as well. The importance of our mental wellness, our mental health. I'm mindful to say that because I think sometimes, whether we do it deliberately or otherwise, we somehow assign labels. We put little, you know, precursors almost before things. Health is health, whether it's a physical, spiritual, financial, social, emotional, otherwise. Let's be healthy, and let's, you know, continue to move in that direction where there isn't a stigma to going to the physician to do your PSA, your DRE if you're a male, or if anybody else, in fact, you know, getting their colon checked, to talking to our friends and family. I don't know about you, but sometimes it is embarrassing. not just a male talking to another male, but even sometimes females talking to females about their visits to their physicians. I can probably share that siblings talking to each other, parent and child having a conversation, but it's important. Maybe sometimes we're not just embarrassed because of the topic, we're probably embarrassed that we don't know anything about that. How many of us, when we go to our physicians, the physician, she tells us, hey, I want you to go do your blood work, going to check for this, this, and this, and we come back, and boy, once we hear everything looks good, the numbers look good, we're happy and we're gone. But maybe it's the my words, the power dynamic. Maybe it's our training that we don't ask a question. Maybe we're so glad to get out of there, boy, we don't want to hear anymore. Whatever the reason is, and so we don't ask. Well, doc, you said that value is in the range and is good, but what does that mean? Perhaps you understand it better than some of us. I'll be honest with you, I don't, and I'm so grateful that the times I do go to the doctor, that they're patient with me. And they say, "Oh boy, I know you got questions," and I do. I'll come with some questions and I'll ask for 2 reasons, so I don't forget them. As confident as you think you are, as competent as you think you are, you're in this space. You probably feel rushed, even though you may not be made to feel rushed. You forget things, and then when you leave, you say, "Man, I wish I'd asked that." Well, go prepared. I'm also glad that the physicians encourage that. Not probably only because it's my nature, but they understand the more that they help to inform you as their patient, you'll be a better patient. You may follow the instructions. It may help them to provide better care for you. Now, it's a work in progress, so we need to come with that disposition, be receptive, hopefully. And again, I say this publicly, and they'll forgive me if I have otherwise, that I'm cognizant that I'm not the only patient that they have, that there were patients after me, so don't monopolize their time. That in my questioning, that I'm not, as much as I may not want to be, that I'm not inadvertently, offensive or disruptive. But by the same token, sometimes some of us have a strong disposition where we say, hey, I want to understand that. Why am I taking that? Why am I not doing this? Again, speak to your physician, and it's my personal view. I don't necessarily subscribe to typing something into a search engine and come up with an answer, and that is the be all and end all, because I don't think there's much value to that. But it doesn't mean that doing so can't be helpful. I just don't think that we should take it as gospel. Not only because the thing that you typed and comes up was put in by somebody else and it could be wrong, but do we trust the source? But at the end of the day, if you found it out and you have a question, you're talking to your physician, say, hey, I read this thing, know what you read, where you read it, and they could help you to navigate that information. But that may be something that is worthwhile in that instance, but not for you. Well, a little learning is a dangerous thing, they say. I say all that to remind us of the importance of being the best advocate for our own health and well-being. And like the gentleman that just called, as we talk about our health, let's not have a stigma, especially when we're speaking to trained, licensed, physicians, psychiatrists, psychologists, and the like. And I say that trained, licensed, because we all probably have a semblance of therapy and don't realize it. How many of us, when we're sitting for a meal, whether it's breakfast over a tea or a coffee or some other libation, whether in the evening or the morning, whether it's lunch or whether it's just a quick chat with a bowl of fish tea, by talking to somebody that we trust, that we're confiding in, that's a form of therapy. But at the same time, we're not trained, and if the person with whom you're discussing says something, you say, hey, you know what, maybe you should get that checked out. Maybe you can go to talk to someone about that. I don't know, maybe women are better at it, maybe they're just much more in tune. But as men, are we doing that with our friends? Sadly, we probably all heard of stories in the media or otherwise where a friend is talking to us almost on a regular basis, but we don't know what's going on in his life and the challenges for whatever reason. Not saying that we should tell everybody everything, but is there someone we can talk to, not only in confidence, but who's going to help us to navigate that thing? I'll give us an example, and please understand, I don't wish to betray the confidences, nor do I wish to embarrass, insult, offend, otherwise inflame any situation. But take the financial challenges that we may be facing. You get up in the morning and you go to work every day, and you come home and you go, man, I save a penny, I can't see what I'm working for, because I got more monthly money than I have all these expenses, that may take a toll on you, mother or father. That may create a lot of challenges within your own environment. How do you navigate that? Back to what I shared earlier. The financial advisors would say, well, you got to save more. Well, you cut your cloth according, you sell according to your cloth. Some of us, we've tried that. We've tried hard to cut back on expenses, but there's no much more we can cut. Yeah. As one fellow said, not only now is he gone to not eating the banana, but he's probably started looking at the peel. Many don't have any more that they can cut. So when I hear some would-be financial advisors say things like that, I'm thinking, man, you really have no clue how hard it is for some people. And at the end of the month, you got $1,000 in expenses, and you only got $800 in income, and you've cut everything you can cut. It may be difficult, or you have had decent income, but now it's seen or increased expenses and less income. How do you make that adjustment? They say, and it's probably good advice, when you find yourself in that position, speak to your bank if you have, honestly, a situation, and you go to your bank and you say, guy, this is it. I want to keep my house. I want to pay my mortgage, but this is what it's at. Don't lie, because it'll catch up to you. Don't take your rent or your mortgage money and go play the lottery or take a vacation, as much as you may feel that would help you. But not to say that sometimes that's not what we have done. Spent our money on something else, hoping that we'll get it back in some way, or we can make up for it. At some point, the bank is probably going to say, well, we can't do much more. Now, you may extend your loan so that whereas you were expecting to pay it off in 5 years, now it's another 15 added to it, if possible. You pay back more. Whether that's the option before you or not, see how it can work. You may have decided, okay, I don't need to have this much of comfort relative to certain costs in your household, so you try to trim those. At some point, there may be not much left to trim. How do we work with that? And those are some of the challenges that I think many of us are facing, and perhaps has created the frustrations that we feel, and perhaps levy the charges and allegations at the government, whether it's elected government or otherwise. And they may be justified, they may be reasonable, but what are we doing to address? Well, let's see if we can find some solutions. 949-8037, 949-6990. And of course, you can WhatsApp 925-3261 and share your thoughts with us, because it's important that we have a space where we can talk about certain issues and appreciate it, And like one of our many listeners, they feel that the amount of money that they earn isn't enough to pay for their expenses. So whether we call it a minimum wage or minimum monthly living wage, the idea is that after they've done their work and they do their paycheck, there are insufficient remaining funds to not only save but to pay all their expenses. Some would share that if you have an increase in your income, your salary, that salary has to be paid for by your employer. That probably will result in an increased price of the good or service that is being provided by the company for which you work. That increased price now may make it more expensive, and then you find, wait a minute, I don't have enough money again, and then you get another pay increase. Prices goes up to pay for that increase in wages. That leads to an increase in the cost of that good or service. So you see that level of spiraling inflation. Maybe that's why our parents and their parents would always say, $1 saved is $1 earned. So if we take the global perspective, the macro view, can our governments find a way to reduce the cost to the country without necessarily, and some, again, I go back to the conversation with the two individuals earlier, who believe that this idea of trickle-down economics works. Well, and they're certainly opposed to that. But also, if a government gives a concession, a tax break or otherwise to a certain entity, that in itself would mean that the cost would come down. Without pointing to any empirical evidence, they both reference certain goods that are now duty free that weren't before, and are those goods cheaper? Some, again, and I say this to them with utmost respect, that the benefit of age sometimes comes wisdom. You had a chance to experience certain things firsthand. They reference many instances where governments of the past, and including recent, that have taken the duty or reduced the duty off of certain items, and they never saw any reduction in the price of those items. Presumably, it's contended that, well, the cost of the item increased, the cost to not only buy the item but to ship the item to Cayman, the insurance, the freight, the like increase. So therefore, the company had to either increase in order to maintain their profit margins, whatever they are, whether that's reasonable or not wasn't discussed. But the idea that governments giving concessions don't always benefit, what the government intended, and suggest that that's a practice that perhaps needs to be carefully curtailed or at least reviewed, and could, the idea of reducing overall costs to the country, not as they shared, suggesting that they would impose price controls on rents or price controls on other things, but trying to figure out how we can reduce the increasing costs so that people have more money to spend on the things that they need to spend their money on. Now, they shared two things that in this country, very much like other countries, are significant expense items for most households. Other than their rent or mortgage, probably people spend a great deal on healthcare, health insurance, and on education. Even the people for whom they attend the government schools, there's probably an expense there. Let's take this call. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for calling.
My good friend, Dwayne.
Sure. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. No, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks. Come on, okay. How are you, man? How are you?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm fantastic. Nice hearing you on your show.
All right. Good to be with you, man.
I heard you earlier.
Wrote
on a little thing about people with some stress, thinking about their bills and rents, and I just want to zone in on the area that I knew that it was an area of concern, but I recently had an opportunity to go with some people who looked at an apartment that was being advertised for rent, right? And Dwayne, I am truly embarrassed. I'm truly embarrassed to be a Caymanian with some of the facilities that are being hoisted on foreign workers who come here and need to have a place to rent. That place that I looked at, to be quite raw and blunt, was not fit for a dog. But it was rented for $800 a month. You couldn't stretch your legs out properly in that room. No. People must have a conscience in this country. And government must have the conscience and the ability to form some kind of an authority with some teeth to enforce not only rent controls, because I think that's coming, because some of the places that are being offered for rent are it's just inhumane, really, for the price that stuff are being offered. And some people are abusing workers. For example, you stay in a house when you rent a room. Let's say $900 for the room in the house, and then the owner of the house has Wi-Fi. Okay, so she says, okay, you can use Wi-Fi from any of the service providers. The most you'll pay is $100 a month for the Wi-Fi. So she says, okay, there's two of you and your daughter. Each of you must pay $50 for access to the Wi-Fi. And then, so in essence, the tenants are paying for the Wi-Fi. The owner can use it free. Plus, she's collecting an astronomical amount for the rent.
Mm-hmm.
But some places are probably worth the $900. It's in a good area. It's probably worth the amount of rent that they want to charge, even though I think it's too high. But really, the conditions of some of these places, there've got to be a mechanism that government can police and enforce and do surprise checks on places that are being offered for rent.
Right, but now I want to ask though, and I want to make sure, and thank you so much too, like everybody else, for calling and sharing your perspective. But you said at the outset for workers coming to this country, right? What about those who are already here, whether they came on here?
Exactly. No, but right. I probably should have qualified to say for all of us.
No. I get it.
I mean, cost of living is too high, and cost of buying up, really, that's another topic for another day. I'll call in because I have views on that too. So what we must do in regards to the open market sort of conditions with property and the cost of building a house and stuff like that. That's another discussion for another day.
But I'm hoping that you will call in, so we understand that discussion.
I'll call back and discuss that because I will zoom in on a man called Mr. Dart and what he's doing to inflate prices beyond the reach of the average Caymanian.
But is it just him?
Well, he's a primary leader, and so I want to call that out right away.
But why would you single that out? I'm just curious because I always like to hear people's justification, right?
When a person has the wherewithal, has a legal entity that brings in $5 billion a year in sales, I won't say anything more. He can play with that.
Fair enough, but what about
when a person can buy a vast tracts of land for whatever price you want to sell it at, then that means that price is astronomically and artificially increased by that purchase price, putting it vastly out of the reach of any Caymanian who want to then purchase property nearby to build a house.
Right.
But as I said, that's another discussion for another day. I will call in and we will have a good, fruitful discussion on that issue. This issue is zoning in on total abuse of the. I would carve out the young Caymanian who's leaving school, has a job, and finding an apartment. Those prices are too high as well. But I'm talking about the person who comes here primarily on a work permit and has to find a place to rent where there's not too many available, and then they find themselves in a room, or in the case of these people that I went with to look at what they said they were going to rent, a dog house really for $800 a month.
Right.
Something, somehow, somewhere must be found by an authority that has power and enforceable authority, and that is government that I can only think about, to be able to control the quality of property that are being offered for rent, primarily to foreign workers who come here, law-abiding, but are subject daily to abuse because they don't stand up for their rights. They don't think that they have a right to voice their concerns because they fear, wrongly, of course, that by voicing their concerns, they're going to be dismissed from their work. And that includes, Dwayne, people who are working out there in all fields, not being paid properly, have no health insurance, being worked overtime with no overtime pay, terrible working conditions, but they don't think that they can speak up because if they do, they're going to lose their job. That must stop, and they must be invited to quickly go to the Department of Labor and file a complaint. And if any repercussions happen to them, there is recourse as to how they are to be treated in terms of penalties to the employer.
Right. But again, you reference foreign workers coming here, right? And I was keep saying there are many here. I mean, I know we have the break, and I certainly want you to consider when you would be an opportune time to discuss this further. But
I would stay on doing until the break is over to finish up.
We have guests that may take us up to 2. Let me check with them, and then we can just stay on a second. We can arrange for you. Don't hang up yet. We'll have on Tuesday a segment with HSA. So during the break, let me talk to you, and then we can tell you what's what. Right? Fair enough. And then we want to share some points that were just raised by our listeners. Brother G, just hold on. We're gonna pause, take a break. We come back. We're gonna be talking about World Cancer Day. It'll be celebrated on the 4th of February, which is like tomorrow, next month starts. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
When you're craving something big, something tasty that gives you that lip-smacking satisfaction, something that hits the spot, there is nothing better than a footlong from Subway.
It's pretty tasty.
Filling and full of flavor. Try our new sweet onion steak teriyaki with a twist. Or the classic chicken teriyaki. Top it with green pepper, onions, cheese, and that sweet onion teriyaki sauce, all piled on your favorite artisanal bread. Satisfy that craving with a footlong from Subway.
Fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty.
Let's make it a meal with a drink, chips, and cookies. There is nothing better than a footlong from Subway.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean, and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location. ValueMed on Walkers Road or Town. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com.
Cayman Arts Festival 2023. From New York to London. Landing in Cayman. 8 landmark events. Global music on the island's stage. On Thursday, February 2nd, 7 p.m. at the Hartwell Theatre. Hailing from the Big Apple, jazz pianists and top jazz and cabaret performer John Webber joins our very own Caymanian Benil Miller. Tickets are available at www.caymanartsfestival.com. For more information, call 922-5550 or email inquiries@caymanartsfestival.com. John Webber and Benil Miller, Thursday, February 2nd, 7 p.m. at the Hartwell Theatre.
Tune in Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. for the Daily Sports Report, covering local, regional, and international sports. Proudly brought to you by Dr. Wayne Porter, offering a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. Call 946-9020 to book your appointment today.
Grand Cayman. The concert you've been waiting for is almost here.
Yeah, man, this is Graham Smart.
The hottest pre-Valentine's ticket in town. Cayman Airways, the Ministry of Tourism, Palmyra Development, and Tortuga presents 3-time Grammy Award winner Cramps Morgan. Cramps Morgan.
What I'm feeling.
Cramps Morgan.
If you give a little more than you take.
Cramps Morgan from the legendary band Morgan Heritage in a special up-close acoustic event. Also featuring James Geary, Terry Williams, D. Doctor, and more. 8 p.m. February 11th at the Mango Tree. This is an outdoor event under the stars. Tickets are $45 pre-sold. VIP tables available. Get online at caymanevents.co or at Mango Tree. Part of the proceeds to Meals on Wheels. Cramps Morgan in concert. Brought to you by Cayman Airways, the Ministry of Tourism, Tortugas Coca-Cola, Stoli, Florida Kanye, Jägermeister, Palmyra Development, The Mango Tree, Radio Cayman, CaymanEvents.co, and Loud Production. Cramps Morgan.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And always a pleasure to be able to have this continued partnership with the Health Services Authority, and a great deference to our guests and recognizing I'm at work, but they have to get back to their desk. We're going to have this discussion and hopefully up until 2, and then after we can do some more open line. And the last caller, Brother G, maybe he can call back and share with us from his economic insight the importance of, as he puts it, putting in place certain restrictions on housing and rents and the like. But honored to be able to celebrate World Cancer Day on the 4th. That's next month, which starts tomorrow. Well, yeah. 2 wonderful guests were no strangers to our studio. If I might, with great deference to Miss Amanda, ask of you as I had during the break. So good afternoon to you.
Sure, yes. My name is Amanda Nicholson. I'm the Cancer Registrar at the Cayman Islands Health Services Authority.
Good afternoon. Glad to be back. My name is Dr. Lundy Richards, and I'm the oncologist hematologist, meaning that I treat blood diseases and cancers at the Cayman Islands Health Service Authority.
Thank you both for that. And I think this is where, as I was thinking about our segment today, it's not just about the importance of celebrating World Cancer Day and what we can and should be doing and the like, but the notion that we have that resource here. We don't need, like how it was in the past, wait for a visiting locum or otherwise travel elsewhere. It's unfortunate in a sense that we have such, I'll use my word, proliferation of cancers, but the notion that we have that treatment, it does well for the patient as well as for the family. So thank you both for sharing us. Now, Miss Amanda, World Cancer Day.
Yes. World Cancer Day is every February 4th, as you mentioned, and it's led by the Union for International Cancer Control. And they have a 3-year campaign, and we are currently in the 2nd year of the campaign, which is called Close the Care Gap. And the goal is really to do everything possible to ensure that people all over the world have access to the care and services that they need with regard to cancer.
When you think about it, I was just trying to find a message that I sent to myself to ask a question. I will find it, may not be today, but I will find it. And it was to do with statistics relative to cancers, and not just here, but mostly globally. And the idea that, one, we're having increasingly more and more information readily available, not just historical, but even in the last quarter in some jurisdictions. And that was driven, I think, much by its registry, so that as a populace they can reference. People have their perspective, but information that is timely can help to inform public policy.
Absolutely, yes. The goal of any health registry is to get a better understanding of how this particular disease is impacting our own unique community. You can't do very much in terms of cancer prevention or management if you have no idea how many people are getting cancer, what types of cancer are the most common. So, yeah, data is an important factor when trying to develop cancer management strategies.
Mm-hmm. Those policies and those cancer management strategies, as Amanda shared, Doc, from that perspective, though, as a patient, sometimes we're concerned about the thing that affects us then and there. As physicians, you're seeing a global picture and wondering, how do we, as we go about, if I may say, celebrating World Cancer Day and bringing needed education information to the populace, how do we, as policymakers, but the general public, take on board that and do something that's positive?
Thank you again. Well, important. I think Amanda led off by talking about the data. Without data, we will not understand the impact of cancer. And you did say a caller who was talking about the economics. And there's definitely an economic part of it that is important to understand the data so that we can plan appropriately. So without the data, we can't do as we should do.
Now, Saturday is the 4th, and sometimes the 4th of February will be a Friday or a Wednesday. It doesn't matter, it's the 4th that is celebrated. Don't know whether the 4th is significant to our discussion, if it is you can share. But what are we doing to highlight World Cancer Day, Ms. Amanda?
Well, there's a lot of things that people can do. They can take the time to educate themselves about how to stay healthy, how to prevent certain types of cancer, You can take to social media and share stories about survival. And, of course, cancer survivors in the Cayman Islands have the opportunity to join the cancer registry if they so wish, helping us get a better idea of what we need to do going forward. And there is talk of a symposium next week to acknowledge World Cancer Day.
Oral.
Right. So, before I hit the symposium, one of the important things to recognize is that certainly from an HSA perspective, and HSA in partnership with other organizations, from time to time we have these blitz highlighting the importance of cancer, and certainly going out and having different patients screen for different things, certainly prostate cancer, breast cancer. These are ongoing things at HSA and to be truthful, at other facilities across the country, which is very good because this is important in terms of ensuring access. Good. So, HSA is always pumping about understanding your own health, understanding what are some of those measures that we can take to protect us and from the complications of hypertension, diabetes, and so on. And the same measures are important, certainly in terms of helping us to live healthy lives and may decrease the incidence of cancer, namely things like good diet, exercise, stop the smoking, reduce the alcohol intake. These are just important day-to-day things that we can manage, right? But in terms of what we're going to do, we do intend to put on a symposium next week, Thursday, 4:30 at HSA in one of our big, I was going to say our big ballroom. We're on this occasion, though, instead of going all over the place with all kind of cancer, we're just going to focus on colon cancer. You know that King Pele just died of colon cancer, and Chad Boseman died a few years ago. He was a young guy, he was in the early 40s, and he died of colon cancer. So we want to highlight the importance of colon cancer. What are some of the, how do we do screening that everybody can basically do? How do we manage and so on and so forth?
With cancer, I mean, it's hopefully I say this with the respect I intend, good that we're talking about it publicly. I don't know about other jurisdictions, but I know here the word wasn't uttered, and if it was whispered. And many would not even share that was what led to our loved one passing. Thankfully now we see, and if they don't mind, I think the champions, the Lions Club of Tropical Gardens, in their breast cancer, they were at the fore. Now we see increasingly more and more public education, physicians saying, hey guys, please come out, we train, we want to help you, but you need to come to us and here's what you need to look for. So with colon cancer in particular, I recall my note, but I wanted to read it verbatim because it was shared by a physician. We're seeing that for some, this is the age of screening, for others, because of other factors, get screened earlier. Just generally speaking, male and female both, are the age of screening what it is? Is it different? Just generally, since going to be focusing on colon cancer.
Generally, the age group is about the same. Typically, we usually look at around about 50, but that age is variable. It can be down earlier based on some of those factors which I mentioned earlier on, family history of colon cancers or other colon tumors. That is very important along the line, because we find young people in the early 30s with advanced colon cancer that can present. So, while there's a little cutoff in the late 40s when you start doing colonoscopy and things like that, but we recognize that those who are predisposed, it's important to start very early. And there are simple things that can be done. But I mentioned the modifiable things that we can do, because all of those contribute. But then we do the screening. It's cheap, easy to do a stool test. You look, is there blood in the stool? Not with the naked eye, but the lab will look, is there blood in the stool? If there's blood in the stool, then we have to, it raises a red flag. Hey, look a little bit closer. And there are some stool tests, I'm not too sure if it's offered here, where they can actually do the DNA in the stool to see if there's any cancer DNA going on there. Then there are various radiological studies that can be done from ultrasound, CT scans, as well as colonoscopy and so on.
And I'm glad that you referenced that. And for the public disclosure, both are yes. Did not see my notes, and it was not Dr. Anita sent this to me, but it was a physician friend from another jurisdiction, and just sharing in passing. Too many times as physicians, we do these things but when something happens, you start to appreciate. And you reference, the DNA, you reference other things, but you also ask, hey, reference this in relation to the heart. It's not our discussion today, the calcium score. So I wanted to ask, if it's okay, some of these tests that we have and some of these marks that we say, okay, at this age we start, and this physician was saying, we maybe need to start thinking more and more, but we need a patient not to be perceived as a hypochondriac, not to be maligned by friends and family, and asking these things, but to be informed. I can't reference the the name of the test, but I'm sure as I speak, you might remind us. But he said there are things we can do, not just the stool, but how then, as the patient, when we come in for a checkup every year, or some of us, every 10 years, to say to the physician, hey, can you check for this? I know I'm only 30, I'm only 40, but what about this? The stool sample, and I hopefully don't offend anybody, our children, we insist that they get it checked up until a certain age. After that, which adult gets a stool sample? So
and it's cheap.
Yeah,
it's cheap. It's easy.
So how
but it can tell us a lot.
Yeah.
It's about education.
Okay.
It's about education, information, not necessarily going into the classroom, but going down to earth and explaining to all our patients, look, this is a basic thing. There's nothing nasty about it. A basic thing that.
But why should we then ask? Because, and I really wanted to read this for us because it made me appreciate the challenges that physicians would have. You're one patient, that physician has probably 100 patients that day, times N for the week, for the month, for the year, so to speak. And you want to do everything you can. But if the patient comes in and says, hey, doc, I don't have any complaints, but could you check this? Sometimes as a patient you need to be persistent, insistent, without being disrespectful.
There are many times when patients do come in and they ask for certain specific tests. Now, we have to be very careful, right? So patient, I want to do this specific DNA test. No, because they may not be indicated. But sometimes patients do have some kind of inclination, and you have to listen twice to the patients.
Right.
When they come and they say they want to do something, it's often because they are experiencing other things, and so they will come, and so you have to try to ferret out to find what else is going on. What are they not saying? So that you can now look and see which test can be offered. But do they need to do certain blood tests? Do we need to add certain things,
right?
Like the prostate person,
exactly.
Their PSA, simple things like doing digital rectal examination. Don't wait until 50. We start.
Do result, Dr. Dre,
we start much earlier. Certainly in terms of the age of cervical cancer. Glad that now we have a vaccine that is given at an early age to prevent that. But yes, that's why the woman need to have her pap smear and so on and so forth.
I guess, Mr. Manu, this is where sort of looking at statistics in the register. If, for instance, we're seeing an incidence statistically of certain cancers that were either not reported or underreported or just not recorded, now we can say, hey, this is it. And sadly, over time, we get the trend. It's a mixed bag, but how do we get to that space, huh?
Well, it's difficult to say if certain ones are underreported. If we were capturing the majority of cancer cases diagnosed in the Cayman Islands, we'd have a better sense of whether or not we might be missing that. But what we've got so far tends to align with what other countries have, like the U.S. and the U.K. We do see the same cancers reported in greater number here as they do in the U.S., like prostate, breast cancer, colon cancer.
Right. And Dr. Lundy, from that perspective, then, it is, again, the patient taking the opportunity to be educated and informed, attending, again, many of the events that, whether it's the Lions or other service organizations, do relative to health screening and exercises. But you reference a symposium next week. Just that word alone would create, this is an academic thing for medical personnel. Sometimes it is. It's good to get that, but
It you know, we while we're providing a lot of update, you know, or just reiterating what is happening to the medical fraternity. Certainly, if the public want to come and participate, it's good because they have the opportunity to ask certain questions, and you know, we'll be open to answering those questions, and they will be well informed.
All right. If I might, and up front, I'll say it's not an intent to put anybody on the spot or to highlight anything, but again, increasing the country's understanding, appreciation, and value for education and healthcare, understanding how we can help to inform public policy, direct our resources to ensure that the outcomes that we think we have or would like, we can get there in time. The DNA tests relative to stool and other things. We know we have some, we know we don't have some, are relatively inexpensive, some aren't, some are available here, some are available there. How do we get to that space where most of us as patients, we're unaware? I didn't know some of these things, but for a little bit of reading just by chance, or others, you know, sharing because they know, or just the natural propensity to learn some of us in have, right? So,
well, access to these what I'm looking for a term, to these kind of new technology is becoming more and more prevalent across the island. So they're coming to come. And if you remember the last is it the health conference when we had, right? There are certainly some things that we're doing to offer some of the genomic tests locally. But it's things that are while at the moment none of the institution actually perform those tests. But if understanding each patient, if we think that it is necessary for some of these tests, then they're taken off and sent overseas. So there's relatively good access.
And as you reference, that one in particular, relatively inexpensive, not unlike the calcium score, for instance, for heart disease and the like. Again, it's information, it's awareness, it's the willingness to invest. You know.
But the inexpensive things, those are very, very important. You know, and we must be very careful that we don't run to do the most expensive things when we can do the basic things and get the answers.
And with that, you know, we referenced lifestyle earlier.
Definitely.
And we've seen, is cancer, either its prevalence, incidence, its recurrence, and can it be mitigated by lifestyle choices?
I think so.
Yeah,
I definitely think so.
Wow.
Right.
So laugh more, listen to the talk show. See, good medicine.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One thing though, and Amanda can back me up, and I've certainly spoken with my colleagues in other institutions, is that we find a number and an increasing number of younger persons having things like breast cancer.
Yeah.
Right, and that is certainly based on my discussion with my colleagues in the other institution and what we see, which is very concerning.
Yeah. And I'm hopeful there's a populace that we're willing to look at statistics. It doesn't mean that we'll find what we're looking for, but if we have it, there's some analysis that can inform policy. That may not sit well with some people, but for me, it's the way to see things, right, Mr. Manna?
Oh yeah, I mean, you can't properly plan for something if you don't have data to back it up with.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with Dr. Richards about we're seeing younger and younger people. We have a vast majority of the cases in the registry are breast cancer, and of them 14% are women under 40. So these are women who probably aren't even getting mammograms yet.
Yeah. And this at some point may change the recommendations as to when we should do what we should do.
That's what recommendations are based off of data.
No, you're perfectly right about that. Yeah. We can only use the data.
And then, I think the many conversations with physicians like yourself across just this table alone who are saying, hey, if we can look at this, we can start to, and we use the phrase of lifestyle illness, not just our diet, but are we sleeping? What are we eating? When are we eating? What else are we doing? Genetics is a clear factor, but what about these other things? Can they mitigate the incidence? It would be good to know that. If there was a thing that we could do that are inexpensive, beneficial,
yes,
why not know it and do it? But Do we? So, Mr. Man, I am certainly mindful that we got a couple of minutes left, and I always appreciate. You are right. We could talk for days and still never tire of the conversation.
Yes.
But share with us so that we can get you back to your job. I can get a bite of that chocolate that I can just. Dark chocolate is good. And let me not behave.
Dark chocolate is good for you.
There you go.
Yes, if anyone listening is a cancer survivor who would like to learn more about the registry or join the registry, you can reach me at 244-2560, or just go to the HSA's website, the Cancer Society's website. All of our information is on there, and I'm always happy to speak with people.
Dr. Richards, what sort of final thoughts you want to share with us?
Well, thank you. And a couple of things. I mean, there are people who are diagnosed either abroad or they get early diagnosis and they go abroad.
Mm-hmm.
But they too can go to the cancer registry because we need to capture the overall data. Just to mention that, yes, to manage, to first of all, to screen, to diagnose, and to manage most of our cancers, they can be done right here in Ireland. HSA definitely, and I'm certain in other facilities, And so we shouldn't be afraid. We do have the technology, we do have the professionals right here at HSA and other facilities. So don't be afraid. It's here. Come. We're here to support you.
Well, if I might, and hopefully it doesn't make anybody uncomfortable, but in my public appreciation and attempt at a positive accolade to share. Thanks. We have it to governments who continue to invest in our health services, to the physicians who, through their continued education, to the constant demonstration of professionalism and competence. We do well for a small jurisdiction.
We do.
It is. Cancer is teamwork approach. It is teamwork approach, and my face may be there, but I am one of the many different professionals, our nurses, our other physicians, or radiologists, or radiographers. Name them. We're all in this together.
I appreciate that. My final thought was, hopefully, you won't be offended by me calling her a friend, but she says, I'm just one now with the mask on. I'm one of the team, so we all look alike. As you said, it's a team. It's not just an individual, it's a collective effort. So
yes,
absolutely.
Thanks to, as I said at the outset, to the wonderful folks at HSA. Thanks for what you do. You really make us proud, and for all who have committed to in the health sector. It's a great place to be. So thank you.
It is.
Happy World Cancer Day. Can you say that?
Yeah. I think people know what you mean.
Okay, I hope so. I mean, he's a recipe. He'll be forgiven for. Hopefully.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful afternoon.
Sure.
You as well.
All right. Well, let's hear what the news has in store for us. And when we come back, our good folks at HSA yielded the last half hour. We're going to have some open line. George made some comments earlier. Let me be into some of the comments that came in on our WhatsApp. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Savannah Pharmacy, proud sponsor of Talk Today, Cayman's #1 call-in talk program. A new year upon us. Upgraded resolutions. Some things change. Some things linger. When it comes to who you trust, your friendly neighborhood pharmacy, Savannah Pharmacy, is here, where everybody knows your name. Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, just around the corner, with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. They say variety is the spice of life, and that's why at Subway we're introducing the new boneless hot sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Zollins. In the forecast tonight, partly cloudy skies with a 20% chance of showers. Temperatures will fall to the mid-70s Fahrenheit. Winds will be east to northeast at 10 to 15 knots. Seas will be moderate with wave heights of 3 to 5 feet. In international news, U.S. President Joe Biden has ruled out providing F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine, despite renewed calls from top Kiev officials for urgent air support. Asked on Monday if the U.S. would be sending the planes, Mr. Biden said no. The U.K. also said it was not practical for it to send its aircraft to Ukraine. Meanwhile, France's Emmanuel Macron said, by definition, nothing is excluded ahead of meeting a Ukrainian minister. Ukraine says advanced jets will help protect its skies from Russian attacks. A Chicago prosecutor is dropping sexual abuse and assault charges against singer R. Kelly, who is already facing decades in prison after being convicted of federal charges. The charges date back to as far as 1998. Kelly, who is 56, was convicted in 2021 on racketeering and sex trafficking charges and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Last year, he was also convicted on sex crimes charges, for which he is scheduled to be sentenced next month and likely won't be allowed for release until he is 80. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Zollins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Between the traffic, the meetings, kids' activities, there just isn't enough time. Best Health Pharmacy was a game changer. Not only are they centrally located on Eastern Avenue, but they deliver prescriptions for free anywhere in Georgetown and West Bay. I could not believe it. When my prescription ran out, they ran it back to me. Best Health Pharmacy, located at Crown Square Plaza on Eastern Avenue, across from Edie's Decor, offering free prescription delivery anywhere in Georgetown and West Bay. Call 949-1301 or WhatsApp your prescription to 924-5358. Best Health Pharmacy. Your health, your convenience is their priority.
The Lions Club of Grand Cayman is proud to celebrate 50 years of service. Join in on the celebration with their upcoming fundraiser golf tournament. It's happening Friday, February 10th at the North Sound Golf Club. Players and sponsors, take the day off work, enjoy the beautiful weather, and know that this fundraiser will support the Lions Club of Grand Cayman Community Services. It's happening Friday, February 10th. Sponsored by Cayman Distributor Group and Kirk Freeport. Email Michael Haviland at president@lionsclubgcm.ky. The Lions Club of Grand Cayman, celebrating 50 years of service to the people of the Cayman Islands.
We give you honor and praise, adoration and glory.
Radio Cayman.
praise time.
Praise him, praise him. Come and let's praise the Lord. Come and let's praise the Lord. Praise him in the morning and in the evening. Oh, let's praise the Lord.
Praise time in the morning.
Praise him, praise him. Weekdays 6 to 6:30 a.m.
Radio Cayman, waking you up.
Rock my soul in the blues of my faith in your hand. Rock my soul in the blues of my faith in your hand.
Praise time.
I know he cares. He'll always be there. Oh, yeah.
Praise him, praise him, praise him.
Praise time.
Set your clock for 6 a.m. or you will miss it.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And some open line to close it out as we started it off. Invite you to call and share your thoughts. 949-8037 or 949-6990. Of course, you can WhatsApp 925-3261. Gentleman who called earlier about housing conditions for the foreign workers, and as we asked, and as he shared, well, it should apply to all on island as well. Sparked a number of comments from a number of listeners, and this series of comments I certainly want to share with you. Always appreciate our listeners who are not only attentive but are willing to weigh in and say, hey, here's what I think. All right, let's take this call. Should we? Where do you want to take it, Ms. Susan? Let's take it on the air. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Not bad at all. I just have one question to answer because I'm totally puzzled.
Okay.
I need my third shot. So I can travel. But every time you call the hospital, they transfer you until they lose the call. They send you to an extension that there's nobody there answering. Mm-hmm. Or they tell you if you go to a certain place at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. I don't drive after 5. I was wondering if they can provide a place during the days. Mm-hmm. In the days.
Okay.
So we can go and get our shots.
Yeah. And I want to be very respectful and certainly not appear intrusive. So forgive me if my question is asked improperly or otherwise. You say you need it in order to travel.
Yes,
right?
Sir.
The jurisdiction to which you go requires that. I thought once you got the two things that was it. So that some places need now 3 or more shots in order to get into where they're going?
Yes, you have to have your little card with you.
All right. I'll leave that to you to know because I don't know, honestly, and I'm not inquiring to find out otherwise. But I know, like, certain jurisdictions, including the UK, from what I gather, you can travel there now without any issues. It may be the other jurisdictions are different, but I thought, they said,
this is for the US.
Yeah. All right. And then, okay, well, I thought 2 shots was it, but now we need 3. Maybe this will be.
Everybody tells me a different thing.
But that's what I'm asking.
I have 2, and I need the 3rd. Uh-huh. I haven't traveled. It's the longest time in my life I haven't traveled since COVID came in. Mm-hmm. So I'm sort of dying to go somewhere.
Well, I pray it's a safe journey, huh?
Yeah. Just a quick trip, man. Just a quick trip.
You're right. Well, I
was wondering if the hospital could come on your Radio Cayman show and said, today we're giving shots at such and such a location.
Right.
Just update the public.
Okay.
But 5 o'clock, I don't drive after 5 because it's getting dark.
Yeah, especially, but, as we go. Now, because you said that you've asked and you got, conflicting information, only out of respect, maybe inquire again and again elsewhere just to ensure that you do, in fact, know exactly the requirements. Sound like you do.
That have traveled told me that they needed. I have 2 that they needed the 3rd.
Okay, yeah. I didn't realize. I thought 2 was enough, but I don't know. So just make sure that you have it so that you can get it. And you are right. If it's going to provide it, try to provide something that is as convenient as possible. Not much help with you in that respect, though, other than, again, maybe you can inquire with a reliable, credible source as to whether or not you do need that 3rd one, and if there's anything else that you might also need in order to get where you want to go. Okay?
Yeah, I do need a 3rd one. Mm-hmm. One day they were at cost you less, but I want to stick to the same 2 I took before.
Understand.
The same brand, and they didn't have that brand there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what I'm asking, and not being very successful with calling the hospital.
Okay. Well, hope you get through. But again, do inquire with the requisite U.S. government entity or even physicians that deal with there that might be able to guide you as to exactly whether you do need it, and if so, and how, and whichever. But I hope you get as you wish. Okay? All right.
So Get them to tell us where we can go during the day to get our third shot.
Yeah, well, perhaps they can. Yeah, perhaps they might be able to let us know.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. All the best to you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, and I pray that your trip, when you do travel, will be not only enjoyable but very safe, and you make it back safely.
Yes, thank you.
Take care, Mom. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. What are we saying, Ms. Susan? 949-6990. 949-8037. Let's use those numbers. All right, let's read a couple of these from our messaging system, which is 925-3261. And now, earlier, and I think, it's fair to say this was in context, caller called in and talked about the living conditions, the amount of money that's being paid for some places. And the caller emphasized, those who come in to live and work here and perhaps being made to pay high prices and living in conditions that I think, fair to repeat the caller's comments, sort of embarrassing. All right, let's take this call first, though. Welcome, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you today?
Oh, I am, thank God, healthy, blessed, and very, very wonderfully made. How are you?
Well, I'm good, thank you, and that's good to hear.
Amen.
Yesterday I watched, not live, but a little later, I watched the interview you had with the distinguished lady Gina Ebanks Petrie and Mr. John Bothwell.
Uh-huh.
And it's a pity that I didn't watch it live because I was going to call. So that's what I'm calling about. It is in relation to something that was said on the show.
Okay.
I think you asked a question which a lot of people have asked me, like when I used to write legislation. When a piece of legislation says a person who commits offense X is liable to a penalty of 6 months imprisonment, does that mean that it's mandatory or is it a maximum? And her answer, relaying what the legal advice was well, whenever it says that is only the maximum. Okay? But you see, what she also said was that the drafters, and she is right in that the drafters have always said, well, the right way to do it is not to say not exceeding, but to just say is liable to 5 years imprisonment. But the understanding is, hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes. But the understanding is that that's the maximum. Now, just a little bit of a comment on that. What the legal people told her is that that's the way they do it in law, and that's the right practice. But that's not quite right, Dwayne. It's not quite right, because in writing legislation for I don't know how many years, so many decades, people always ask me the same question that you asked the other day to say, well, what does this mean, and so on. And whenever I told them, I said, well, the practice in our office, and that's what it is. It is a practice in the Cayman office, is that we do not say not exceeding, okay? But the practice in other offices, for example, in the federal office that drafts legislation in Canada, as much as possible, especially the modern statutes, they always say not exceeding. Because that way a member of the public will understand that. So what they were telling her, like these people in legislative drafting, suggesting that somehow that's a practice that has to be followed, that's not quite right. If you go to the criminal code in Canada today, which has got more than 700 pages, it says in each and every single case, it says not exceeding. Why? Because you want to promote that people who are not lawyers should easily be able to understand legislation. And let me now move to very quickly to a general point. This has been the problem in Cayman with legislative drafting. There is a way in which whenever people say, well, look, can you adopt certain ways of drafting which can allow people in public, members of the public, to understand legislation more easily? And they say, no, but this is our practice. That is wrong. You remember that for a long time our legislation was drafted in the masculine. Okay.
Right.
Again, that is just a practice. It does not mean that legally that's the way it has to be done. In New South Wales, they went gender neutral in 1983. And yet in Cayman just went gender neutral very recently. I think in the last 3 or 5 years, that's when they went gender neutral.
Right.
And the general point I want to make is that, you see, the questions that you asked are very valid. The answer to them is not to say that that's the way legally it has to be done. That is just the practice of this particular office. And the office has to continue to respond to the cry of people that, see, they need to be able to understand the laws. Another question you asked her yesterday was, well, what if there's a conflict between the laws? Now, that is a very complex question because what the law tries to do, what the rules of interpretation try to do is, they try to say that whenever a law is written, you must interpret the law in a harmonious way. Don't interpret the environmental law on a similar provision, interpret the penal code in a different way. And yet sometimes you can't avoid conflict. But the way you deal with
Hello, sir?
which you deal with conflict. For example, if a law was passed earlier on, then the one which is passed later on contradicts the last one, then you have to assume that it was implicitly repealed.
Right.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But the courts do that when they are stuck. Like,
So is that a doctrine implied repeal?
Sometimes you get laws where, for example, like the Court of Appeal Act says one thing, the Divorce Act says another thing. They have a rule which says that the particular qualifies the general. So, like there was a case, a divorce case in Cayman, where they had to decide whether they should follow what the Court of Appeal Act said, which said before you appeal, you have to apply for permission to appeal, or whether you could do it under the divorce law, where it did not require permission to appeal. And what the Court of Appeal said was, okay, there's clearly a conflict here, but we will read the divorce law because it's a narrow act dealing with a narrow subject matter, that we will take it to be an exception to the general rule. So it is a very complex area of law, but I just thought that I should weigh in a little bit on those issues. But the main point really I meant to make is the legislative drafting department must respond to people's complaints that the laws sometimes are not easy, and that you shouldn't always tell people, no, this is the way we do it. If they say they want gender neutral, they should have gender neutral. If they say they want something to be laid out more clearly, they should say that.
All right.
That's what I want to say.
I appreciate that. And I know we have the break, and I don't want to take too much time, but I just wanted to clarify. Thanks for sharing that, because we did want that to understand that more clearly. But in a case of legislation like in this particular act, if this says, the fine is $500,000, it doesn't say maximum, it doesn't say not to exceed or up to, however, then just for clarity, does that mean that is the fine, $500,000, or is it, as she shared well, it can be, that is the maximum? Just for clarity again.
Okay. It is only the maximum. And just to add one more thing that I haven't said, and the reason why you interpret it that way, it's because in the Interpretation Act, which is the law that has the main rules for the interpretation of laws, it says that whenever in any law a penalty is prescribed for any offense, that penalty shall be deemed to be the maximum penalty. There is something in the interpretation that says that. Yeah, so that's why it is that way.
And as I'm perhaps understanding from what you said, it would be simpler for us to say a fine not exceeding this amount, so that we would know that is then more perhaps understood by the general populace. All right.
It is generally understood by the general public, and a lot of modern drafters, they prefer that you should actually say not exceeding in every case, and in Canada that is something that they do, and I agree with that view.
Okay. Well, thank you for helping us, and as I say now, I leave the interpretation to lawyers like you in the courts so that we understand it, but thank you for helping us to appreciate that. All right?
Thank you, Dwayne. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Okay. Cheers, as my friends in a certain part say, even before raising the glass. Well, let's take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to read a couple of the messages. Stay tuned.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, X-ray, and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Savannah Pharmacy, proud sponsor of Talk Today, Cayman's #1 call-in talk program. A new year upon us, upgraded resolutions. Some things change, some things linger. When it comes to who you trust, your friendly neighborhood pharmacy, Savannah Pharmacy, is here, where everybody knows your name. Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, just around the corner, with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Mr. Campbell, we have your test results. Do you want the good news or the bad news first?
Good news. No, wait, bad news. Give it to me straight, doctor.
Your blood work came back. You've got erythrocytes all over.
Oh no, this can't be happening.
Here's the good news. That just means red blood cells. It's a good thing. You're completely fine.
With 99% of medical claims paid in 5 days, we're like a doctor who doesn't want to be a comedian. CG Brit K. Good like that.
Grand Cayman, the concert you've been waiting for is almost here.
Yeah, man, this is Graham Smart.
The hottest pre-Valentine's ticket in town. Cayman Airways, the Ministry of Tourism, Palmyra Development, and Tortuga presents 3-time Grammy Award winner, Gramps Morgan. Gramps Morgan.
What I'm feeling.
Gramps Morgan.
If you give a little more than you take.
Gramps Morgan from the legendary band Morgan Heritage in a special up-close acoustic event. Also featuring James Geary, Terry Williams, D. Doctor, and more. 8 p.m. February 11th at the Mango Tree. This is an outdoor event under the stars. Tickets are $45 pre-sold. VIP tables available. Get online at CaymanEvents.co or at Mango Tree. Part of the proceeds to Meals on Wheels. Gramps Morgan in concert. Brought to you by Cayman Airways, the Ministry of Tourism, Tortugas Coca-Cola, Stoli, Florida Kanye, Jägermeister, Palmyra Development, the Mango Tree, Radio Cayman, CaymanEvents.co, and Loud Production. Gramps Morgan.
Yeah. Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. And as we close out today's program, if there is a call or two or 22, we'll take them all, if Susan says so. Ever play the game Simon Says? Well, Susan says even more so. Alright. A couple of comments from our listeners online. It says reference to NAU. Now, I think that name change has occurred. Is it Department of Financial Services? Something like that. I'll get it right. I know I should know it, but we all still refer to it as NAU. So the NAU needs to, send out personnel to inspect these places that people are paying, thousands of dollars for rent. Some of the places isn't really up to standard, up to par, is good quality, and you're paying a lot of money for nothing, basically. And some of these places, you actually have signs being put up saying, these are NAU rentals and the like, and some were saying, well, no, we don't accept them. Irrespective of the district, the listener identifies some in our eastern districts where you get value for government for the amount of the money that's being paid to the landlords, so to speak. And when, again, because it's funds being paid on behalf of clients from the government coffers, say that the NAU should stop paying out the sums that they're paying to these so-called landlords, because it's not really value for money, and the tenants that are staying there are pretty much in a position where they're trapped between a rock and a hard place. They can't do any better at the time. They have to accept these substandard conditions, some sharing, the living conditions wouldn't be akin to a doghouse, as it were. So with that in mind, the question that we constantly hear being asked, and is it being properly addressed? What are we doing at the living conditions? How are we ensuring that people are not living in substandard housing? Or we are increasingly hearing calls, just more recently, from elements in the private sector that in order to accommodate the workers that they're going to be bringing to the country, they need to have not just more housing, but cheaper housing, suggesting that they be allowed to increase the density. Some, presumably larger employers, either have proposed or are considering proposing to government being allowed to build, company housing, as it were, where the workers are come and housed. I'm reminded that when what is now the yacht club, when that was being initially developed, the dredging taking place, that there were housing for the workers there. That, if I'm told correctly and recall it accurately, created some discussion. You can infer otherwise as to what is intended. That may not have been the practice that we should have accepted. We are now, how many decades later, seeing a similar proposal come to the fore, where whether it's the hospitality sector, the construction sector, employers are saying, well, we could not only increase the density, but allow, the housing by the employers to be constructed to house the requisite personnel. Many of you have said, but wait a minute, this issue of housing, not just the amount of housing, the quality of the housing, the cost of the housing, why was not an issue for those who were living and working here prior? Why is it now only an issue for those you're going to bring new to the shores to live and work? That in itself creates an emotive response. But I go back to what I think we should, especially as parents and policymakers and would-be politicians, not ignore the comments by young Chad Anthony Powell Jr., who says, we got some serious problems. Here we are, young students, aspiring minds who want to do great things, questioning whether we'll have a country that we can come back to, not only to live and afford to have housing, but find requisite jobs and the like. So what are we doing for future generations, and what are we doing for those of us now? Much to ask, much to contend with, and much to be held accountable for, because as time goes on, how are we going to do what needs to be done in order to ensure that it's the right thing? Well, not just questions, but questions with a desire to seek solutions, and perhaps solutions that are workable, solutions that bring the greatest benefit and the least amount of cost, financial and personal cost, to our society. Perhaps a collective input that will help us. For those who either know or were aware and part of the Vision 2008 exercise, however long ago, perhaps the concept, perhaps even some of the ideas are still relevant. Perhaps the notion that it should be revisited is important. But if we keep pointing fingers at each other without accepting responsibility, without being willing to draw alongside to assist, are we going to get anywhere? What my friends say, like spinning top in mud, well, you might know the saying. I'm mindful that I have been blessed to be associated and interact with many from different walks of life, jurisdictions, nationality, cultures, economic background, education, experience, and expertise. But only when we take on board that we're able to actually do anything of significance, if our hearts indeed are intent on doing the very best for all of us. Well, it's not a naive endeavor, nor is it intended to be noble, just honest, forthright, with a desire to bring best for others. Tomorrow, just as a heads up, please join Mr. Art for the record. As my schedule is now, I will be off tomorrow. So, schedule to be off tomorrow. Glad for it. I can tell you now that I will be applying for some other time as the months unfold. Maybe even next week, maybe next month. Who knows? And with that look of Susan, she says, Nah, Bobo, you're not going if I can't come. So I'm not here tomorrow, God's willing. You'll still have a fantastic show. And so grateful for the phenomenal team here at Radio Cayman. Good people who keep you straight, remind you of what's important. And I'm truly, truly proud of the excellent team of civil servants that we have. Public servants who give so much willingly. I know some sometimes don't always do what we're supposed to do as parents, as adults, irrespective of whether we're self-employed, part of the management of a private sector entity, or whether we're retired. But we know better, so we try to do better, because if not, then we are no better. You like my colloquialisms? And the parlance hopefully will still fall and resonate with those who otherwise may speak a different dialect. Until tomorrow, hope you enjoy this afternoon. I see you on Thursday, God's willing. Well, Lord's always willing. Hopefully our hearts are as well. Until then, my friends, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Six years.
3 beloved isles. 1 beloved station, Radio Cayman.
The voice.
The heart. The soul of the Cayman Islands.